Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be at the epicenter of Catholic drama and Renaissance theology, this will be the focus of the world's press, the Sistine Chapel, as the cardinals prepare to elect a new pope beneath Michelangelo's sublime ceiling. It's worth pausing to consider what it means to vote for spiritual leadership beneath a cosmos rendered in fresco. This isn't merely an architectural setting, it's a theological and political manifesto in plaster. Michelangelo began the ceiling in 1508 at the behest of Pope Julius II, the warrior pope, played by Rex Harrison in the film the Agony and the Ecstasy with Charlton Heston. He wanted to add to the church, both in terms of the papal states and in terms of the dignity of the buildings, to rival the grandeur of classical antiquity. And the ceiling was completed in 1512, transforming what had been a blue sky dotted with stars into a kaleidoscopic vision of Genesis, prophecy, and judgment. And the composition, arranged in 9 central panels, moves from the separation of light from darkness to the drunkenness of Noah. But the single most iconic image, and arguably the most theologically charged, is the creation of Adam. The nearly touching hands between Adam and God, the fingers, have become shorthand for that divine spark, the transmission of soul, the dignity of man. And it's particularly poignant in the conclave context, the idea of human beings participating directly in the divine purpose and the movement of the Spirit. The ceiling also features prophets and sibyls, Jewish and pagan voices foretelling the coming of Christ. And the syncretism is crucial. The church is both rooted in scripture and the air of classical wisdom, Roman grandeur in ecclesiastical robes. And 3 decades later, in the middle of the storm of the Protestant Reformation, Michelangelo was dragged back to the chapel. This time it was Pope Clement VII who commissioned the Last Judgment, though it was completed under Pope Paul III in 1541, long after Luther's theses had nailed their indignation to the cathedral door of Wittenberg. And the Last Judgment covers the entire altar wall, disrupting the architectural harmony of the chapel and violently asserting one single eschatological truth. The terror of the final reckoning. Here Christ is no gentle shepherd, but a cosmic judge with his arm raised, not in blessing, but in sentence. Saints hover and twist in muscular fury, their blessing ascending with angelic assistance. The damned are dragged down by demons and their own corruption. And one man holds his own flayed skin, that's St. Bartholomew, and the face on the skin is Michelangelo's own, a moment of self-effacing genius or tortured confession. And this was art not for decoration but for fear and awe, a dramatic mirror of the Council of Trent's dawning reforms. But Michelangelo's naked bodies scandalized more than inspired, and after his death under Pope Pius IV, a modest painter named Daniel de Volterra was assigned the task of covering the offending genitals with swirling draperies and vague tufts of cloud, and his nickname, Il Bragatone, the breeches painter. And his additions turned sacred anatomy into floating fabric, a gesture to post-Tridentine decorum, but also an early act of artistic censorship in an age of spiritual anxiety. The naked bodies, previously expressive of Renaissance humanism, were now viewed as indecorous and even dangerous, and Michelangelo's synthesis of flesh and spirit had gone out of theological fashion. The two works, the ceiling and the wall, bookend a seismic shift. The ceiling, with its optimism, grandeur, and classical fluency, reflects high Renaissance humanism suffused with confidence in divine order and papal authority. The Last Judgment, in contrast, arrives in a world fractured by Protestant criticism of indulgences, of Leo X's raising of indulgence simply to pay for all this artistic excess and doctrinal corruption. In response, the Catholic Church doubled down on awe, mystery, and orthodoxy and just spent more on art. And the Sistine Chapel thus becomes not merely a palace chapel, but the architectural embodiment of Counter-reformation theology, art used not to decorate simply, but to catechize and to discipline. And the sheer expense and expanse of these frescoes, the scaffolding, the pigments, the labour, was a financial and theological counter to Protestant iconoclasm. If the Reformers stripped churches bare, the Vatican gilded its walls in rebuke. And now, beneath this vault of human striving and divine judgment, 133 cardinals prepare to choose the new pope, and they will look upwards to scenes of creation, of prophecy, of fall and redemption and final justice. And the Sistine Chapel is therefore a reminder this is no ordinary election. It takes place in a theatre of divine history where every vote is cast under the shadow of God's finger outstretched and Christ's arm raised in final judgment. It's not merely the art of Michelangelo they face, but the weight of eternity in painted plaster.